खवातीन हज़रात, भाई मशरिकी और मगरिबी मौसीकी को मिलाता हुआ ये अनोखा सा प्यारा सा जो एक्ट है जिसे हम A-Slam कहते हैं. We've got in studio with us Hussain, better known as Evie, from the musical act called A-Slam. Hussain, thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Thanks for having me, man.
No problem. Okay, so first of all, great year for you. I think it's been a really exciting musical journey. You know, beautiful video sort of premiered at Tvone. I think it's been an exciting year. Oh, would you agree?
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
So what I want to know is behind all of this. I mean, you're so young right now, and have already sort of done so well for yourself. Where did your musical journey begin?
I guess the very beginning, I would say playing alto saxophone in elementary school.
Wow. How old are we talking right now?
So I played clarinet in grade 6, and I played alto saxophone in grade 7, something like that, or maybe grade 4. I can't, elementary school.
It's one of those things when you're really young, basically. Yeah.
But that's where the beginning of my music started, and I knew playing in like high school bands and then jamming and stuff that I really liked music, and so then I just stayed with it, through high school, and then through like jazz band and stuff like that.
Right.
And so that was the very beginning of my.
Now, I find that really interesting that you've got like a classical musical backing, sort of being able to sort of play in jazz bands, knowing proper instruments as opposed to just, I found a keyboard one day and I decided music was my calling. Do you think that having a classical musical backing was really crucial to having a successful career?
No.
No?
Not at all. I think it's nice to have producers that have both.
Yeah.
But other people would argue that it also is kind of constraining, because once you learn rules of music, then you forget what your paradigm that you're working in. So a lot of the partners that I work with, a lot of them aren't musical trained, and some of the greatest music producers on the planet are not classically trained musicians.
That is such an interesting perspective, because we've had a lot of musicians on the show, and I think that's sort of one of the things everyone will vouch for is that, yes, classical training, it's a musical form, but what you're saying is the fact that sometimes just being classically trained sort of constricts you in the ways of how you're able to produce. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, if you look at jazz, for example, what is the whole jazz movement? It was amazing musicians breaking out of what? You know what I mean? So like, and then they became their own field. So it's nice to have that, and I think if you work in a team, it's good to have someone that knows that. And once you go into music, it's good to know the language of music. Like, so when people are talking about key and tempo and chord changes, that you understand what they're talking about. But I don't think you need 8 years, 4 years, 2 years of that.
True.
Do you mean?
Yep.
You have, if you pick up a keyboard, or you pick up now like a MIDI pad, or you pick up 2 drumsticks, go at it, like, and if you feel like you need lessons, or once you've established, some sort of talent that you naturally have, you want to go hone that talent, don't be afraid, then go take lessons and hone it. But I don't think like formal classical training is mandatory needed in the musical genres that we're in.
Makes sense. Okay, so that was the very beginning. Elementary school, alto saxophone and clarinet.
Yeah.
Then, I believe you won the international songwriting competition.
Yeah.
Tell me all about that.
So it went from alto saxophone to bass guitar and drums.
Oh wow.
That's where the rhythm section started.
Yes.
And so that's how producing music came. And so then when I got out of high school, I wanted to go into music production. And so once you start producing music, I find you start writing music. It was for me anyway. And so I had written a song about my mom.
Nice.
And I got an amazing singer named Inez from Vancouver to sing it. And a couple other featured artists. And this is where I was kind of like, am I an artist or am I a producer? I didn't really know. So I loved work, and I still love working with lots of artists. So there was 8 artists on this song from Vancouver.
Wow.
I wrote the hook and my parts. They wrote their own parts. And with that beat we'd got from the internet, like there's a lot of people doing beats online, and we submitted the song for the International Songwriting Competition, and it won Best Hip Hop and R&B Song.
Wow. So
it was 15,000 entries, and it was 88 countries.
Wow.
And so we placed first in our category.
That is beautiful.
So that's when that was like, okay, obviously I'm as a songwriter, as a producer, as a recording engineer, like I'm making music that is of world standard, that maybe now I can go into this.
Can I ask how old were you when this actually happened?
It was the 06, 07. So that was what is it now? I'm 26 now.
You're 26 now, so we're talking about 6 years ago almost.
Almost.
So you were 20. You weren't even legal. You were like barely sort of of legal drinking age, and you were already sort of beating sort of 88 countries.
Yeah.
That must be.
But that was before I had an album. That was just like one single.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I had only done a couple songs before.
Was that the moment when you kind of decided, you know what, maybe I can sort of make a profession out of this?
It was really. You kind of wonder, is it going to be a part-time? Is it going to be a hobby? Yeah. And that was when I was like, okay, maybe I can take it.
Especially when you're South Asian, right? Everyone's like, okay, well, do your business degree and get an MBA. And this can be something you do on the weekends.
So I wrote that song for my mom.
Yes.
My mom is amazing. Like financially, she could not. There's no way she could like support me in my music career.
Yes.
Like we're not very well off back home. So in that sense, people are like, oh, how much money was behind your music? But a lot of things that parents can do is just not hinder. So
yes.
a big thing is you could have, your parents could financially support you, but then they'll only support you in something that you want.
Yes.
Where in some cases, my mom's support was not hindering. When I was like, here's how much money I'm saved, I'm buying a microphone, a preamp,
yes.
a keyboard, she was like, okay.
That's
do you
amazing.
mean? That's,
yes.
It's a different kind of support to not, I never had to fight to go into music.
Right.
And so that's where my mom was awesome, yeah.
I want to actually sort of just drive that point home. I mean, I think, Hussain, I'm going to call you Evie from now on because that's your Evie. ने जो ये बात करी है काफी प्यारी सी बात है कि वो कह रहे हैं कि जो माँ बाप जो support देते हैं बच्चे को वो जरूरी नहीं है कि माली support ही हो. It could just be जो हौसला अफजाई, जो हिम्मत अफजाई, या if nothing else, don't be a hindrance. कि वो रोकते नहीं थे बच्चे को कि वो आगे बढ़ने से भाई, you know what, go ahead, pursue your passion. And I think I love the fact that you mentioned the fact that you actually saved up and you bought all of this. It wasn't just mom and dad being like, here's the microphone, here's the guitar, and I think that.
But, yeah.
And I think that's a really big thing. Do you think that really shapes the character of someone to produce better art, to produce better music? The fact that you've actually had to work for it. It wasn't as if you had this big Mac sort of computer at home. Mm-hmm. You were working on beats when you were like 12. Do you think that's a contributing factor?
Yeah, I think that contributes to your character.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying, if you can financially support and you want to support your artists, great. You give them a leg up. Yeah, maybe they didn't have to earn it, but timing is huge, and if you can give them an extra 3 years into the business above everyone else, great. And you can never look down at anyone that it's not their fault if they had been given.
Yes.
Like a huge example, Willow Smith is Will Smith's daughter. Unbelievably talented.
Will Smith's daughter.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, Will Smith can be funding her, but does that mean she's any less talented?
No, probably not.
So if you can, great. But yeah, I do think your character is shaped by a little bit. So yeah, I do think that where I am in the business and how people look at me, they kind of hold a certain amount of respect in that I did have to earn it on my own, but that does not take away or add to the music.
Right.
Like the talent is irrespective of whether I had to earn that money myself or if someone could have supported me before. What
was her reaction? You've written this amazing song about her. It's clearly one in thousands of entries, which clearly stands out. Yeah. It's about her. How did she feel about it?
Yeah, so obviously she liked it, but me and my mom are so funny. So we're not like a kind of like an I love you family. Like,
yes.
So
most South Asian families are.
Yeah, so you could, and I think a lot of South Asians get a test. You know that when you bring home a report card that's all A's and 1 B, and they'll go,
where's the 2%? Yeah, I know, exactly.
So my mom, I think when I turn this in, when I am financially where I want to be and like artistically where I want to be, I think then it will come. But I don't obviously I'm sure, and I know she's proud.
I'm sure she is.
I know she is. But can she really come out and tell me that?
Probably not.
Not yet.
No, I think I think it is. It's part of our culture. The fact that we worked so hard to get to where we are. I think that often with Desi parents, and अक्सर Desi माँ बाप के साथ ये मसला होता है कि हमें डर लगता है कि अगर if we say that you're doing great, I think the concern is that you'll be like, I'm doing great, right? But of course, whether your mom comes out and says it outright or not, I think your achievements, winning the International Songwriting Competition, junior nomination, which we're going to talk about in just a bit, they speak for a lot for the fact that you're doing pretty okay for yourself. Now, what I want to know is, you've won the competition. Now you're considering that, this might be something you might want to look into long term. One thing is not hindering you in pursuing your passion. It's another thing altogether when you say, I want to make a living out of it. How difficult or easy was it for you to decide that? and how difficult or easy was it for you to convey that to the family and for them to digest it?
Well, so I live only with my mom, and that's why we're so tight. So and we never even had to have a talk. I've decided to. It never even happened. I was just doing music, and I started doing music more often, and and I never had to sit down with her and be like, because she just was always. She's always just been supportive of whatever I wanted to do, so I never had to have that talk.
Was there never an expectation that you will be a doctor / engineer / lawyer / accountant?
She thought I would be a teacher.
Sweet.
And I'm still in school. I have not graduated yet. I'm still in school, but I used to tutor. When I was in high school, I would tutor other students, and I very much enjoy teaching and tutoring. And so she always thought that I would be a teacher. So yeah, there was, and yeah, she was like, "Well, are you still gonna go to school?" And I'm like, "Yeah," but and then she's like, "Well, what do you want to go into?" And then I was like, "Yeah, most likely I'm gonna try to make music my career." But I'm in school, not as necessarily a backup to my music career. I just think like education, again, it just adds to your character. So like how much I have learned in school as part of who I am in my own character and in my own intelligence, that's why I'm still in school.
And to be very honest, I think this is a mindset for this generation that we can do one thing that we're good at. I think human beings, we're capable of more than we give ourselves credit for. I think that we're multi-talented people, multifaceted, and I really don't think that a musician can be a teacher. I mean, there's a different side of you that gets satisfied by helping others learn, and by creating music is a different ballgame altogether. Growing up, we spoke about the jazz movement being sort of breaking out of the norms. You've broken out of quite a few norms. I mean, fusing Latin with hip hop and bhangra, all of these sort of elements, which are so not sort of your typical sort of mixes. Where did these influences come from? Growing up, who were your musical influences?
So I grew up in a hip hop world. I have an older brother who was a hip hop kid, and he raised me as a hip hop kid. So we grew up listening to hip hop, like Dre, Snoop, and then my biggest influence from that realm was Bone Thugs and Harmony. And if people don't know who that is, it's a group of artists from Cleveland who rap and sing at the same time. And so they rap very fast, which is cool, and they can also slow it down, but they also choose a note and a melody, and you'll find a lot of their rhymes, there's a melody, you could play the rhymes out on a piano, and they're not the only ones that do that also, but they are probably the most popular, and they really did pioneer that. And Crazy Bone is his name, and he smoked that, like he thought it was gonna work, and he stuck by that style, and he really blew it up. And that is the biggest influence on me from a lyrical. So people will hear me when I MC on songs. I really do pick my notes. So I will write my lyrics and then choose my melodies. It's kind of like, so it's a mix of singing and rapping. And that's where that came from. Then from the musical style, the fusing, it really, there's a lot of people I can point to that influenced me on that. But the reason I was even exposed to their music was largely because we grew up in Canada and we live in these multicultural places, and Vancouver is very mixed. And so I met a lot of like South Asians in university who were listening to Rishi and Bali and Juggy, and like, I'm like, what is this stuff? And then I met musicians who could play that stuff, like Barinder Narang. He was a Doli that I met at university. And so it was that fusion of styles really was because of where I was, and I was so into music, and the other people were so into other styles of music that it was all coming together, and that the talent base was there. The musicians were there, like the Spanish, same thing. Lots of Spanish singers, lots of reggaeton parties and Spanish nights, and the talent. So that's kind of how all that started coming. And then once I decided that I loved that style so much, then I like really Rishi and like RDB and these guys, who most people know are pioneers in this genre. And then Kanye West was coming out at the same time, and so his like mixing and recording style with like the Bone Thugs and Harmony kind of flow with like this Rishi Juggy Bali Sagu like mashups, and that is kind of what turned my style into.
It's amazing sort of how many influences go into sort of creating a good talented act, right? It's like building blocks that go into sort of creating your musical persona as well. And I want to talk a lot about that. Of course, the बहुत सारी बातें करनी है और EV के साथ from Islami. Of course, we're going to talk about the Juno nomination, उनकी जो नई music video जो कि फिल्मी festival में premiere हुई थी. So much to talk about. So भाई आप कहीं ना जाइएगा क्योंकि हम बस एक छोटी सी break लेके अभी गए और अभी वापस आए.